Welcome back, everybody, to the CHG podcast.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
Sorry about last week. I had a family thing, so thanks for staying with us.
By family, we mean a baby animal was born. David had to see it.
Yeah, there was a hippo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Went to go see a hippo.
He had to go see a hippo. So yeah. Sorry we didn't cover episode 4 last week, guys. The Last of Us HBO show. We will be briefly going over it today, but we're going to spend most of this podcast going over episode 5 that launched early in the U.S.
to avoid the Super Bowl.
In the U.S., we have the American football has the Super Bowl, which is our big deal every year, a big old sporting event. I don't know. I mean, I know internationally everyone knows the FIFA, but I don't know if Britain or somewhere in the UK if they have like their own yearly or biannual like big soccer, football tournaments of their own. But we have it for football. American football is the Super Bowl. It is this Sunday, actually tomorrow from when we were recording this. So they released Last of Us on this past Friday, to avoid fighting for
airtime,
airtime and everything. Well, not really airtime; it's just popularity because HBO, streaming. So it's more of just like attention, fighting for attention, and all that stuff. Because everyone's eyes are going to be on the Chiefs and the who else, David? Eagles.
Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes, everyone's going to be focusing on them on Sunday.
The first Super Bowl with 2 black quarterbacks.
Oh.
Yeah. History.
Okay.
The first Super Bowl where 2 brothers are playing against each other. So the first 2 black quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, and then the brothers are Travis and Jason Kelce.
Trivia. There's your trivia for the day, everybody. Your American football trivia.
So you Brits can
sleep on that one tonight, guys.
I know American football.
Yeah, go take that to the pub for the pop quiz or the trivia night or whatever. But anyway, so before we get going with episode 4, we wanted to kind of touch on episode 3 because we were going to do this. We were going to do this last week as well, but so episode 3 was about Bill, and his relationship with Frank. Was it Frank? Frank.
Yeah,
and
Frank.
I mean, for people who know, fans who know, Bill, we all knew Bill was gay. Gay was gay. We all knew Bill. Gay was Bill. We all know Bill was gay. We knew he had a partner named Frank. We didn't see really anything of it, but now in the show they kind of retold the story, kind of like almost like a prequel, and then led up to the modern day for us to see their relationship in action and its glory. And we felt it was handled
good, well
fine.
told.
It was handled just fine, and it didn't stereotype anything. I felt, at least, it was just like 2 guys who like guys and they liked each other. There you go, right? Just bada bing.
You replace Frank with a woman, and it plays out like the exact same.
Yeah, everything was the same, right? But it got review bombed to hell, and to no surprise. Yeah, and there's a bigger story here that I don't know if news outlets would talk about this. Maybe if like someone did like an editorial on it, but like most of them are not going to go into much detail. But I have some more extra context on this, and so does David. But the first thing to address is that you gotta understand, most people who are review bombing this are 9.5 out of 10 are not fans of the game, right? They came into the show, that'll be a cool zombie show, whatever.
Well, like,
those are probably the ones I'd imagine review bombing.
I would bet even that, I would say the majority of the people who are review bombing didn't even watch the fucking episode.
Oh, probably not. Probably not. I mean, it is arguably still a filler episode, no matter how good it may or may not be. It is a bit of filler.
I just think they heard that, 2 gay guys, let's go fucking,
let's just go fucking ape shit. Yeah. But here's the better context, and I'm not trying to provide an excuse for them, but there is. Moving on. So my mom watches a lot of TV. She's been watching a lot of TV for a long time. I don't watch TV. And you watch TV, but it has to be anime, so that doesn't count. But my mom watches a lot of regular, I guess you would say live action, but just regular TV shows, programming across all types of platforms. She's been doing it for years.
Traditional
And
programming.
Traditional program, we'll call it traditional, even though it's probably she's streaming it. But anyways, and I guess there's been a bigger discussion as of late about the inclusion of minority groups, LGBT groups and all that stuff in the shows.
Yeah.
And there's been a part of the pushback, reportedly, it's just because it feels part of an agenda. It feels forced. It doesn't feel natural, and it feels like every show has it to where you feel like it's shoved down your throat. And my mom, she feels that way herself. And so if you have these people, all these show goers, or whatever, who watch all these shows, and then they're just like, oh, another one, right? Without, and especially if you add that into them not actually watching it, to know that, yeah, it's in here, and yes, it is another show that has it, but it is done in such a normalized and humane way that there's really nothing to complain about. But since they didn't, or they most likely didn't, and they already have these preconceived notions as well, it's just like that's also part of them fueling it, right? I'm not excusing it. I'm just providing more context. I guess this is part of a bigger issue in normalized television that I don't think would get discussed in normal conversation.
I think what it is that you have these situations where it, like, in my opinion, it is not a secret that that alternative relationships have not been represented in media. I don't think that's a secret. I don't think that anyone would say, "Oh no, they've been represented this entire time." So when you try to make that switch, when you try to say, "Okay, now we are going to implement this," you're gonna have a filling out period between okay, how do we do it? How do we implement it? We want to show that we're going to. So I think that there's missteps that you can make in that process in a creative sense, where you don't do it justice creatively within your story, and it is forced in that way. But I do think that there are people who just who are going to see something that's abnormal, that they see as abnormal, introduced into their sightline, which they most likely avoid that in their regular day life, and now it's being brought into their viewing life, and any kind of representation is going to feel forced to them because they see it as abnormal. I think a good thing, something I heard a long time ago, was some people would be like, oh look, they're just there's another time they're forcing a gay relationship in front of me. It's like, can you imagine if a gay person was sitting there watching TV and they're like, oh man, just another straight relationship forced in front of me? It's every time for them, so it's just, but I just think that that there are going to be missteps, and there probably have been a lot of times where showrunners or whatever have said, we need to have a gay relationship and we're going to make it known, and maybe that's a misstep, but I think it's just a step on the road to having it become natural. It's the same thing that we kind of had when we had to force certain regulations in the hiring practices. We had to force certain regulations because if it wasn't forced, then the status quo was going to stay where it was at. And so you have to force it first, integrate them into the process, and then you can kind of just have it happen naturally. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good points you point out. We just wanted to just bring some light to it, just with some extra extra context, because the only thing you're going to see in the news articles about it, which is oh yeah, they review bombed it all to hell, and because of homophobia and all this stuff, but there's a bigger conversation to have about it, and we just wanted to just bring a few extra points. I will say, I doubt anyone watching this is someone who is not about that cause. But if you happen to not be about that cause, I can tell you that my mom, who is, I guess, of the group who feels that it has been forced a little too many times.
Yeah, my mom too.
Well, we know your mom. She admitted she felt it was fine. She was not turned off.
My mom definitely didn't watch it.
Well, my mom, yeah,
she's not watching the show in general.
My mom is watching the show. I got her into the show, and she said, because I warned her because I thought she didn't want to watch it. I told her straight up, I was like, you probably don't want to watch this episode. Like, first of all, it's filler, and secondly, it's like you can't really show like the whole. That's the whole thing. And she was like, whatever, I'll watch it for myself. I'll judge for myself. And she was like, I was fine. It wasn't that big a deal. I was like, okay,
yeah,
cool.
I do think out of any time I've ever seen it done, this is like the best I've ever seen it done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch too much TV, so I don't have a lot of examples. But I will say that when in the game, at least when it was introduced, and that was one of the first few times we had an openly gay character in a game. You know, well, I don't know how open he was about it, but
you just knew it.
We found out that he was, but like to know that was the case, you know, it's like, all right, you know, you don't think about it. You just like, okay, you know, because he's so.
And in this, you know, in the show, you had to think about it. Like they weren't gonna let you. Because I think in the game, not saying that the game didn't do enough. The game, I think, did just enough. Like I don't think that,
for the time it did. It did much as it could.
I think that was fine.
Yeah.
But this, they were like, hey, we're gonna show you this relationship. We're going to, if you have a heart, we're going to make you care about this relationship. If you agree with their lifestyle or not, you're going to care about these people. You're going to see the love that they have for each other, and we're going to make you care. Like there was no avoiding, you know, watching this episode and avoiding, you know, the context of what was happening. And I think that, you know, as long as you didn't go into it with, you know, pure hate in your heart, there was no way you were making it out of that episode without feeling some kind of like, oh shit, these people, whether I agree with their lifestyle or not, these people loved each other. Yeah. And like, it sucks that what happens.
It just felt normal. That's the point of it. And I think that was the goal. It's, I guess you would say different, but it's still normal. I think a good test is me in a heterosexual marriage. I could see myself and Serena in those roles. Like easy. I could see Serena as Frank, me as Bill, and I'd be like, you know, the same thing. I'd be like, I drank the poison too. Like we're dying together. Yeah. And the only difference is that Serena would be fucking pissed. Like she would not have taken it like Frank did. She would have been mad. She would have been so mad. Anyways, that's what we want to touch on that real quick because it was really dumb when I saw it a week ago or so. So moving on to episode 4, just a quick recap on that. So they got into Pittsburgh or Kansas City.
The change stuff.
Shit got real. Yeah. I will say we're not gonna spend too much time. Maybe about 10 minutes on that. But
let's go. One thing we really liked, one thing we didn't like, and then give our quick grades. That'll be quick. A quick review of it.
Oh gosh, okay. I gotta really think back because I still have episode 5 on my mind.
So I'll go first. Go ahead. I loved the shootout. So like something that's been kind of like for people who I don't know, who I think are, in my opinion, who aren't, I don't want to say intellectual because like I don't want any of our viewers, if you feel this way, to feel like I think you're not intellectual. But like,
you're hella dumb, people, guys. You're so dumb.
there are some people that are like, oh man, there's not enough fighting. There's I need more bang bang boom booms. So we had some of that today in that episode, in episode 4. It wasn't a lot. It was only like one scene, but I think it was done so well. The shootout between Joel and the Raiders, like it was good. It was action packed. I think it was done in a really good way. And the fucking when Ellie shoots the dude, her reaction to like shooting him and she's like, oh fuck. And then like when he starts like begging her, like, you know, oh, we can work stuff out, you know, it's fine. And when she like, when Joel's like, you need to leave. And he's like, no, because he understands that Joel's not going to kill him in front of Ellie. So he knows the only chance he has to live is Ellie stays. And he knows if Ellie goes that he's fucking dead. And just like the desperation in his voice. And then when eventually, you know, off camera, you hear him just like crying out for his mom. I'm just like, oh, fuck. Like, yeah, these people are, you know, morally gray at the best people, but like they're still people living in this world who have family, who have moms. And this kid, it was only like 20 something. And yeah, like he's Oh man, that's what got me. I really love that. I would say, and this carries on to episode 5, and we'll talk more about it now, or later. I I don't love Kathleen as an antagonist. I think I could have, but they would have had to have, and we'll talk about this more, but they would have had to dedicate more time to her backstory than they maybe had the opportunity to, because they probably couldn't do another full episode of backstory like they did for Frank and Bill. But I just didn't love. I wasn't convinced about her as a character and a villain. So those are mine. Oh, and I'll say probably the adaptation was again low, probably like a 5. Like I'll go a 5 or a 6 because they did adapt like the first part of that interaction between the Raiders and them like perfectly. Um, and then but then it was also a lot of extra stuff in the show as far as the game. So like I would say like a 5 or 6 for adaptation. The show wise probably like an 8 or a 7. I love the action, but then it kind of again the Kathleen part just didn't work for me as well as I think that maybe it did for other people. So I'll say like a 7.
I have questions.
Yeah.
So with the not really questions in the first on your good thing you liked, it was it for me. Part of me was how you felt about like, oh gosh, like how old is this kid? You know, like is his mom actually around? Is he just yelling out for her regardless?
Oh no, I
I
felt it real. Like I was like,
but part of me felt it was just like you said, desperation in the sense of maybe he actually doesn't have a mom,
no,
but
like I
he is
felt
doing
it.
everything. I'm just saying how I felt, how I took it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
took it as both. I felt part of me was thinking like, oh gosh, my heart really reached out for this guy. But part of me is like, maybe he's just trying to mess with Joel's head because these are
well, yeah, I
Raiders.
think.
They're out to live for them. They're out for
Oh
themselves
yeah, like
and they will do
I think if
anything.
Joel, I think if Joel like Kate was like, yeah, well, okay, yeah, we'll take you. I think they're dead. Like I think Kathleen shows that later in the episode that she is ruthless, and she shows it more in episode 5 later on that we'll talk about. So like, yeah, I think that there's no way that that would have been a good interaction, but I definitely think that he was, I I was sold on his
And that's fine.
desperation.
I was sold on his desperation, but because it works so well because since I know how the Raiders are in the game and
Yeah,
how they're portrayed in the show, for me, which I still think is effective, it makes me question. You know, like he did it so well that it's like, wow, does he have a mom? Like if I was in a position, right, it's like, do you or do you not? But I can't take that risk regardless of the fact
yeah,
because you're probably going to kill me no matter what. If I give you
yeah,
an inch, you will take a mile. And that's why I felt like that was so impactful too, honestly. But also with Ellie thing and how like she shot, even though she said she has killed someone before, it didn't look any easier the second time. And so, you know, she shot the guy and then she had to run away. And it was something I loved how she went behind the wall again and you could tell she was starting to cry, but she wiped her tears away. She grabbed her bag and she was like, let's go.
yeah.
It reiterated the motif of that entire game of, you know, you can't take time to, you know,
To
to
mourn. Yeah,
cry, to mourn, to be sad, to anything. You just have to push on. And I felt that scene really encapsulated that whole, just like I said, motif of the game. That's just how the game is. Like, because Joel and Ellie go through a whole bunch of crap in the game, and they have to keep pushing on. The game
yeah,
pushes on, and it's so ruthless in of itself. But that's the world that they are in. But and that battle showed that through the innocence of Ellie. Um, so I thought that was super effective. Not that's my favorite part, but I wanted to comment on that, especially on the kid, because that's what I was feeling watching that. As far as Kathleen, um, yeah, it's weird. Like it was a risk. It's definitely a risk using her as
yeah,
your leader, right? Because she's not innately intimidating. She doesn't sound intimidating. She doesn't look intimidating, you know. And so it's interesting how she came to power of the group, right? It's so strange, right? And I remember thinking like, huh, okay, this is definitely not who I thought was going to be our baddie, you know, of this group. Um, I don't know if I'm sold on it, but like I was still intrigued because there's just people now with motives and reasons which we didn't have before. So I was like, maybe she's not intimidating, but I'm still curious to know why they're here. Why did they put these people in the show where they were never in the game? So, yeah. Okay, well, as far as what I really liked, man, I wish. Crazy how a week has just ruined my brain. Frick. Because I want to take the easy way out and say what you said, because that whole.
I mean, you could just concur, and then we can move on.
It really was, but I would like to, provide other parts of the episode, but it was, I guess, it was mostly them just running away, just trying to hide.
And that's why my episode score wasn't as great too, because I remember the fight, and then they talked about how to use a gun a little bit.
I will say this
you saw the Marauders and how they're basically they overthrew Fedra, but now they're basically tyrants.
They're basically Fedra anyways, so it's like what really changed. And we find out while they're hiding that Ellie had killed someone before, and then they're like running away, and the whole time they're just like, "Where's Henry?" And I'm like, where is Henry? Like, what in the world could Henry have done? Like, they're sending the whole militia for this guy. Like, I'm like, he's one dude. Well, I mean, yeah, his brother, but like, he's one dude. Like, what could he? Did they make this man? Did they make him a superhuman? Like, who is?
What is Henry become? We'll go over. We're talking about.
We'll go over. But it just so I guess I was really intrigued the whole episode. But not so much for Ellie and Joel this time, but more for, this militia group, because it's like, whoa, it's new, but it's not new in a bad way, in my opinion. Because I was like, again, it's something you have to do at this point in the game. Like, for those who are just like, oh, too much changing of the game. Blah, 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 blah. Like, I get it, but I knew this would be where a lot of changes would happen. Because it has to. You can't have a show where it literally just goes from area to area and you just take out guys for no reason. You can't have that. So you have to think about when people who complain about the not being 1-to-1 everywhere all the time. It's like, well, you can't do that. It's going to be boring for a show. People don't want sometimes, yes, people do want just action all the time, but that usually only works in a movie, not in a long-running show. You're not going to be invested. So I was expecting a lot of changes. We got a lot of changes. I was not really upset by the changes. I will say, you know what? I'm going to do a little twisty thing. It's not the thing I like the most, but what I liked was, and it does play back to what you said, though, about the kid, right? Because the kid dies, and then they find the kid and someone else, and they named them. They were like, oh, Brian, whoever their name was.
Yeah, Brian was the kid's name.
They were like, okay, now we have these two. Now we have two new people we have to worry about who have killed, Brian or whoever. It made me think of they found a way to bring about what they had done in Last of Us 2 into the show.
I think that theme is being applied to this first half, which I think is good.
Which it hasn't really been that apparent yet until now, because now, yes, you found people in the game at this point, you killed them and ever, but they were just people. It was just fodder to get to one point, to continue presenting you that challenge.
The only time that the first one gets to this question of morality is the final part of
pretty much the final. I think they mentioned some people, like some friends. I think they call a few people by name a couple times throughout the game. It's very rare, though. They don't humanize anybody. But here in the show, there's an immediate humanization of these baddies.
You get the sense that these are just a group of people, too.
Yeah, at the end of the day, no matter, they're very militaristic and they have all this ammunition and weapons and vehicles, but they are still people and they are looking out for their own at the end of the day. And you get that because they know who dies. They like, that's Brian, that's Jake, whoever. They know their names. And in Last of Us 2, that was the big thing that they were pushing for too, was humanizing the villains. And in the behind the episode thing, Neil Druckmann said that. He said, like, I love humanizing villains because to make us question too. So I liked how they were able to incorporate and adapt in a way the next game, at least conceptually, the next game into this season, which is focusing on the first game. So I like that. So even though, it's not in the first game, it's still in the Last of Us universe, whatever, in the saga. It's still within that game's narrative of making people feel like people, even though you have to kill them, they're still people. So I like that. I'm going to go with that. That's what I really liked about that last episode, was the humanization of the villains, because that doesn't happen very often. And I'm still not going to root for them, but at least like their causes are understandable and their issues are understandable and everything too. What I did not like, I don't want to say Kathleen, but I kind of want to say Kathleen, because I can't think of anything else that was really egregious. But she's not even that egregious.
Well, there you go. That's enough said there.
I don't really have that much I was upset about, honestly.
You don't have
I
to.
will say there was a scene I was upset about, which I think was in episode 4.
What?
I think it was when. Here's another thing I liked. Tommy, the voice of Tommy, is in the show.
Yeah. He's the second in command.
He's the second in command. You would never know it if he didn't say it, because he doesn't sound anything like him, anything like his voice actor at all.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
But anyways, there was a scene with those two where he needed to show Kathleen something in this like area, this like locked area.
Yeah.
It was like this, like the ground was moving.
Yeah.
Which I was like, what is under? There's like a dragon underneath there? Like, what is in there?
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna see some crazy new infected or something just for the show.
Yeah.
But then Kathleen, like, she saw it too.
Yeah.
She looked right at it, and then and it started really moving, and they dipped out of there fast. And then the dude, Tommy was like, we need to handle this. she's like giving him some vague threat about like, I will do it later. Henry isn't part of number 1 because she was so blinded, right?
Yeah.
Was that episode 4 or was that episode 5?
That was like the end of episode 4.
Okay, because I guess I'll go with that. I hate it when people make blatantly stupid decisions, no matter who they are. It's like, you can't. I mean, maybe because I'm never gonna be able to relate. At least I hope I never have to relate to being that blinded by some cause that I see something like that and I'm like, we can handle it later.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's going to be a problem. Like, I don't know what that is, but the ground does not move like that normally. Like, and so I guess I'll go with that. Like, it's just, you could tell the blinding was there. And I was like, man, that is so, it is for me, especially when it is a villain, it just makes them look so dumb. Right. And like, if you're going to make me believe you as the leader of this big old city militia, it's like, I'm going to assume you have some intelligence and leadership, and you can make smart decisions and pragmatic decisions. But no. And I mean, I guess it's part of her humanization, but I'm like, I don't know. For me, because I guess I feel like I can always be pragmatic no matter what, despite how emotional I may be. Again, I'll hope I never have to be in that kind of situation, but it's just watching it, I'm just like, this is hella dumb. She's hella dumb. And I'm like, this is gonna come back. And it did. Oh, it did. Oh, did it? This is what so I'll go with that. That's what I didn't like. As far as ratings, for episode 4, the show as a show, I think this is what people have been waiting for this whole time. People have been waiting for it to be something like this, even though it was really more the first episode. The first like 20 minutes, 25 minutes of it. Yeah. But I was still really happy. I was very intrigued with like, what in the world was going on with Henry? What in the world did he do? So I'm going to give it an 8, honestly, because with that first like 20 minutes or so, which was almost 1-to-1, actually was one thing they didn't do, which I'm happy they didn't. You remember, but there was a bit in that fight initially where Joel gets his head smashed in through one of the glasses, about to trying to impale his throat through like the shard of glass, but he stops it and he throws the other guy's neck through the glass. I was really hoping they weren't going to adapt that, and they didn't. So I was very happy because I was not ready for that gruesomeness. I knew, because if they were going to do it, I knew it was going to be so disgusting. Yeah. And that's kind of where I kind of get a bit squeamish when it comes to violence like that. So They didn't do that. But anyways, everything else was great. It was pretty close 1-1. Even where the car was like wrecked was like almost perfect. It was wonderful. And then with that suspense going out, overarching the whole episode, when we find out that like they're looking for Henry, and I'm like, what in the world? Why? So I'm gonna give it an 8, just as a general episode. I think this is what people have been waiting for, right? As an adaptation, because of the fact that yes, a lot of things were changed or remixed or whatever. I'm still going to give it I think I'm going to give it a 7 because yes, things were adapted from the first game, but since they brought in those concepts from the second game and brought it here where we didn't have a lot of that in the first game, now they have an opportunity to do that. I feel is still adapting, maybe not the game, but they're adapting what Last of Us is about. So
I get you.
I'm going to give that a 7 just for that. But that's episode 4. We're going to move on to episode 5, and fucking hell, I was
so right off the bat.
Oh,
right off the bat, let's talk about the first major change. So Sam is aged down.
So significantly. By like 4
in the game,
years.
He's like, in the game, 12, he's like 12, 13. And
he's
in this one, he's like 8 or 7.
He's 8. I think he's 8.
Yeah, they said his age. Yeah, so like 8 or whatever. And he is deaf.
And not just is he deaf, he's legit deaf. His actor is deaf. Yeah. It was not just like I just had to learn ALS. I am deaf because in the after episode, they interview him. He's signing in that. He is legit deaf. They actually got a legit deaf kid actor to be Sam, which is crazy. How did they even find this guy?
Like, well, you know, they the guy that he was with, the other black deaf guy that he was with in the after show, he's like the leader of.
He said, the director of ASL or.
Yeah, and that dude has been in movies and shows. I cannot place him, but he was in a show where he was also an old black deaf dude, and I cannot for the life of me remember what show or movie he was in. But I recognize him. I was like, oh my god, Baby Driver. There we go. He was in Baby Driver. Yeah, he was the black dude that the main character took care of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, he was in Baby Driver. Anyway, so let's just talk about that change. So I think the overall, so I'll just come out and say it right now. This is my favorite episode so far. I think that everything they did in this episode beat the game in every facet. It's not that there's not some stuff I have wrong, because actually, the funny thing is, I'll say this is my favorite episode, but it actually has the most things that I didn't like or that I balked at. But at the same time, they did so much good and better than the game that even with it having the most negatives of any episode I've had, it also had me just, enthralled. So I loved the change that they had of him being deaf. It made plus that kid, that act. Oh god, that kid was fucking deaf or not. Fucking have that kid in more shit. Like his facial expressions and stuff. I was like, man, that kid has so much drip. Like that kid, dude. Like the way they his facial reactions to shit and stuff. I was like, oh man, I love this kid. This kid is legit. So I love that. I love that it made him even more reliant on Henry. So anyway, sorry. What did you think of the changes, both the age down and him being deaf in the story related?
Well, not only, I think Henry was also aged down because in the game, which actually I'm not mad about it. I mean, we don't know how old Henry is. He never says it.
Yeah.
But in the game, I remember. Okay, so you may miss this if you play the game, but so we find out Sam is 12 or 13. I know he's like a year. I think he's like a year younger than Ellie, because Ellie's 14. Well, when they get into that neighborhood after the sewers in the game, that is, you can have these optional conversations as with some of the houses that are there, and in one of them, Henry talks about how he reminisces to, when he was a kid and having barbecues with his family and all that stuff, and well before the outbreak, well before Outbreak Day, well before that. And I'm like, well, in the game, the outbreak was like 20 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
so he had to have been
And
in his 30s at
he
least,
was born
or
before
late
that.
20s. Like
So
you would have to be
their
in late
age
20s at the very
so
least.
yeah, and he looks like a grown ass man. Okay.
Yeah.
Henry looks like a grown dude in the game. And Sam's 13 at most. So I'm like, that's a crazy age gap, dude. That's crazy age gap. But in this show, and I'm not saying you can't, I mean, obviously it still worked. I still felt very attached to them, even despite their crazy age gap as brothers.
Mm.
And maybe they were doing that on purpose because it makes him more look like a father, right?
Mm.
Like a proper father, since that age gap is so large. But anyways, in the show, their age gap looks way less. Like Henry he looks and acts like a teenager.
I would say I got early 20s, like
Really?
21, 22. I think
Okay,
so.
well, I felt that the kid in the store that Joel killed was older than Henry. And if you're going to say that kid was in his early 20s,
I would
there's
say
no way
that kid's
Henry can
probably
be.
mid 20s, and then Henry was probably early 20s.
They're 19 at most for me. That kid, he looks so young. He acts like he's so young. Like Henry in the game, he knew how to kill, and he had killed.
Yeah.
He knew what to do, right? He wasn't scared to do anything. In the show, Henry's never killed anyone. He says it straight up. He's never killed a single person. He's like, the closest I've come to killing someone was pointing that empty gun at you. It
Yeah,
wasn't
like
even a
that's the
freaking
most
loaded gun.
violent I've ever
That's the
been.
most violent I've ever been to that point. And so I'm like, this dude is they aged they down aged both of them, but they made them a little bit closer in age, um, to where I felt actually more attached to them now because now they both like Henry's way over his head and he's literally just taking it as best he can, and obviously and it makes you even feel even more sympathy for Sam because now he's a legit child. I mean, yes, 13 is still a child, but he's he's 8 years old is like, come on, like you just got done with diapers a few years ago. So
So some context
I
real quick. According to the Last of Us wiki,
okay,
Henry in the game is
uh-huh,
25.
I can believe 25.
So maybe he was
I can believe
5 when the
25. I
yeah.
can believe 25. So 25 and then 13 at most for Sam. So that's 12 years. That's still 12 years as I bet. I mean, it's like
It's a
what,
good
you and your
amount.
brother? Is you and your brother 12 years apart? Like your oldest
About
brother?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like that's a huge gap, right? Um,
Yeah.
but in the show, it feels a bit less, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I would I mean I know I would say 12. If Sam's like 8, I would believe again that he's early 20s
I
is
mean,
12.
I still don't believe he's early 20s though. So I'm still thinking. I mean, yes, I said 19, but that was just to appease you. If I was taking a guess, I would say 17, 16. Honestly, like that's just because just more of the way he acted, not necessarily the way he looked, but how he acted. Um, I don't know. He seemed like a teenager to
Yeah.
me. But either way, they're both de-aged a good amount, which I think works well. As far as Sam being dead, at first I was confused. At first I was like, why did they do, like I was like, what the heck? This is a strange twist. But it does work in the sense of how, Neil said this, you said it just a second ago about it now provides even more reason for Sam to rely on Henry, which kind of makes their bond have to be even tighter. And it also makes you realize that Henry has to be even more of a protector for Sam because in this particular world, being deaf is like such a detriment to your survivability.
Yeah.
Even if like you're the most hardened, even if you survive, like if Joel was deaf, he would know like I mean, yeah, you're lucky to live as long as he has anyways, but like he would know he has been toying with death from day one. If you are deaf, you are toying with death. Because like you, being able to hear like clickers and the infected coming at you and all that stuff, like you would never know when someone's sneaking on you. And in this world, people will be sneaking. So yeah, it makes their dynamic even more desperate and you can, and and it kind of heightens both of their roles as the protector and the protectee of what their dynamic is. So it works for me. It grew on me. I was confused. I was not immediately like, oh, this is so cool. I was like, okay, let me just see how this plays out. But then I was like, okay, I can roll with it. I don't know where the heck he found that like insta disappearing magic ink pad that he had. I don't know where he found
You've
that.
never seen those before?
No, I don't know where
Oh
he
yeah,
found
yeah.
that.
I had
But
a kid.
oh, not me. I was like, where did he? What in the world is this? Just
Yeah.
gone. Like what? Sorry, I guess I just had a crappy childhood. I didn't have any of that. I don't know what that was. I thought he found that like somewhere secret. Maybe he had to use a shiv, open a shiv door to find that guy. Anyways, yeah. So that was a big change. But it works. It works. It doesn't. I don't think it takes away anything.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Sam. And they were able to get through some of the bits that they needed to involving Sam, even without him verbally talking. So
yeah,
it worked.
like I said, I liked it more than I cared about these brothers. Like I cared about the brothers in the game too, but I think these brothers were much more likable than the brothers from the game. I liked it all. I loved both of the actors. Lamar Johnson is who plays Henry, who's 29 in real life.
What?
Yeah, he's 29 in real life. He's born in
29?
94. Yeah, 1994.
He's
Yeah.
literally my age. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me?
Yeah,
He
right? He looks good.
No, not just he
uh,
looks like he really does look like a child, and he's not that tall either, which is
so
also an interesting change because Henry was supposed to be he's about as tall
he's
as
a
Joel.
built dude. Yeah,
Yeah, Henry
he was
was
a
a
big
capable
hoss.
looking guy, which again,
A
which is why I'm
change.
happy. Which is
Yeah.
why I'm happy with the de-aging because it does make Henry does seem to appear like he's a teenager, and so
Yeah.
it makes everything he does more desperate. Everything he
Yeah,
does seems desperate, and
for
it
sure.
makes you more attached to him,
So
which is
like
why I'm happy he
so
got
no,
de-aged too.
I loved the change. I loved the act. I felt way more connected with them. One thing that we didn't get to talk about from last episode, but I'll bring it into this episode. So I think in the past we talked about how like I wasn't really feeling as connected to Ellie as I was hoping I would be. And I said back then, if you go back in our archives and look it up, I said that I think I would feel more connected to Ellie once the relationship between her and Joel grew. And the jokes and the end of that episode when she like gets him to laugh about the diarrhea running in your jeans, like that and other interactions, and then going into this episode and seeing them interact. I'm fully on. I'm connected with Ellie again. Probably not as much as I am at the game Ellie version, but I'm very connected to Ellie now. I can see the connection between her and Joel. I can see how Joel now cares about Ellie, not only her mental state, but also obviously not, her physical state as well, but her mental state. So I'm totally bought into their relationship now in the show, which I think is something that was desperately needed. And I think they delivered it on it in episode 4 and now in episode 5.
Which is interesting. Okay. I'm not mad about. Okay, I'm no longer like okay. I don't know how I feel about Ellie. She's just there for me now. I am. I don't really care about Ellie per se. I care now about the relationship between Ellie and Joel. That's what I'm now on board with. Like, I'm literally thinking a lot. It's been interesting to see how in this show, Joel has been more sympathetic much sooner
Yeah,
than he
and
was.
also sympathetic towards Henry real quick too. Like he kind of gets on Henry once he finds out he's a rat, but like then he like on his own figures out like, oh shit, I was kind of fucking hard on that kid. Like he was just trying to protect
Yeah.
his brother.
Well, also it could be a thing about also with he probably also looked at Henry that way because Henry was a grown ass man. He can say what he needs to say to Henry in the game because of how he was, but maybe since he's a teenager as well. So Joel seems to have a soft spot for these young kids, especially if they're looking out for other people.
Yeah,
And so I think that's another reason. Maybe it could be another reason why they de-aged Henry too, to where Joel has different the way he interacted with this Henry was head and shoulders different than how he interacted with the Henry in the game. Completely different from the start to finish. So And I think part of it is just because like there's no threat that Henry poses to Joel, whereas in the game, Henry kind of does pose a, he could pose a threat to Joel.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Joel can let his guard down and feel empathy or sympathy for Henry here, whereas very little of it was shown in the game.
Again, just the building of the relationship between Ellie and Joel, like in the start of the episode when they're like holding up Joel and Ellie, and Henry's like, look man, I want to trust you, and then he I can't remember what Joel says, but he's like, man, that's not a fucking good answer. I don't like how you're saying that. And Ellie's just like, don't worry about him. He's just an asshole. And then it's just like, Joel, tell him everything's fine. Everything's great. Like just the way he says it is just like, oh
yeah. And
man.
she's just like,
oh Jesus Christ. like that interaction is just fucking perfect. Again,
which again, it's so much sooner. It's so much sooner, which has been interesting and I guess it works because it now it makes it seem okay. And I'm not saying this is their grand plan, but it makes, to me, what I'm thinking is in the game, Joel's emotionless, right? Or at least mostly towards Ellie. And then they get to Tommy, and then he tries to pass on Tommy or Ellie to Tommy, but then Ellie's like realizes what's going on and runs off, and then Joel and Ellie have their moment, and then they go back, and then Joel changes his mind. And that's where it starts. But in this show, like Ellie didn't know that was Joel's plan all along.
Yeah, and
right?
They kind of switched it.
But in the show, Ellie knows that's the plan. Joel said it at Bill's house. We're going to Wyoming. Our brother's a Firefly. He could take you to where you need to go.
I'm gonna hand you off.
Straight up says it.
Yeah.
Straight up says it, right? But I think, then at least it leaves open like, oh, well, then where's the sympathy going to come from, right? Like, are they going to do that? Like, something has to happen then to make Joel change his mind.
Yeah, I think he's going to change his mind from the.
This is why, because they're. But that's why, because I think him opening up sooner, much sooner in the show is what will provide that change. So when that happens,
so we have to talk about there's two main things left to talk about. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about the interaction, the interaction between the Marauders or whatever they're called, and when they finally. So we get one scene from the game that's not one for one, but it's without gameplay, it's pretty close. The interaction with the sniper.
Oh no! Other we can go back before that. Talk about Kathleen. How do you feel about Kathleen's backstory?
Oh, that's right. Oh fuck. Okay, so
because we finally got her backstory.
Kathleen's backstory. Here's how I feel about it. I did not care. Like that's one of those biggest, like what I was talking about earlier. Like one of my biggest problems of the series so far. Like it was the first time I literally, while she was talking, I was like, I'm gonna fast forward, and then I was like, wait, no, I can't fast forward. Like, I just didn't give a shit, and it's not because I don't think I could have given a shit. I think if they would have taken an episode or part of an episode or something, I don't know how they would have done it spacing time wise. They give us an episode to show her brother in action because they talk about how great of a man he was. Henry talks about how he sold out like the greatest man he ever knew. For getting Henry leukemia medicine, which apparently I don't know if Henry is just like there's some like miracle drug in this universe that like cured him of leukemia, or if he still had leukemia. That was another weird thing. Like he was just like, yeah, like he was sick and I had to give him medicine. I think they could have just left it at he was sick and I had to give him medicine, but he was like, yeah, it was leukemia. I was like, why do you throw in leukemia? Like, there's nothing that just cures leukemia. Like, I don't know. That was a weird part for me. But anyway, they talk about how Kathleen's brother was this great man, loved by all, stuff like that. And then she's talking about the brother and how he would protect her, and told her that this was a safe, but like the room that they had was like a safe room. And like, I was just like, I don't care. Like, I just don't care. And I think that if they would have been able to show, him leading the resistance a little bit, and how maybe she like disagreed with some of the stuff that he would do leading the resistance, because it seems like what happened was he was leading the resistance and it wasn't really going anywhere because maybe he wasn't making the necessary steps to really overthrow Fedra. And when he died, she like fucking brought the hammer down, and that's when shit really started to work for the resistance. But I would have liked that backstory. Because we didn't have that backstory, I just didn't care. Like,
yeah, I hear you saying, and without ever knowing who this man is and only hearing about him a couple times,
yeah,
it's hard for us to care as much as
yeah,
Kathleen
he just
cares.
sounded like Jesus. Like, he was like, oh, even though I'm gonna die because that kid sold me out, forgive. You turn the other cheek. Like, I was just like, oh, so this man was Jesus. Okay, like,
Cool, your
cool.
brother was Jesus.
Yeah,
All right.
like, all right. Like, I don't know. It just seemed very characterless. Like, they were trying to get us to care, and I just didn't. So,
Yeah,
it
maybe they
fell
could have
flat for
taken
me.
at least maybe like half an episode, or or like just various disbursements of the past
Yeah,
of
like
her
flashbacks
brother.
or something.
You
I don't
know,
know.
that kind of maybe fleshed out
I
that a
could,
bit more.
I think we what they if they would have had the time budget, whatever was the reason they couldn't do this, I think it would have been able to show also why the resistance respected Kathleen. If they showed her, like, they're like, maybe there's this thing that like that the resistance, comes to her brother and is like, hey, if we do this, yeah, we'll have to murder a whole bunch of people, but we'll be able to like do it. And he's like, no, we can't do it. And so they don't. And then he dies. And then she's like, let's fucking do it. And then, so we see that they see her as the leader that's able to do what has to get done, which is why they always follow her. Because they, in their
Or
minds, are like, she does what has to be done.
or they could also, in addition, we could also see, because Kathleen, and how we find Kathleen in a bit of a broken state.
Yeah.
Yes, she's ruthless, but she's also a bit broken. We could see that change once her brother dies, whether he was murdered, killed, however, right, whatever happened.
Yeah. Because I think
That like maybe like something seeing her switch to unleashing this brutal,
well,
ruthless, cold
and
side of
so
her
see,
would
here's
be
what I
interesting
see.
too.
Here's what I see with Kathleen, and I think this is what they were going for, and I just think that it's kind of lost in the next thing we'll talk about. I actually do like her interaction with Henry in the next thing we'll talk about, but I think what they wanted us to see is like that the resistance sees her as this resistance leader that overthrew Fedra for the resistance. She did not. I don't think she overthrew Fedra for the resistance. She overthrew Fedra. She killed Fedra in retaliation for killing her brother. I don't think she gave a shit about the resistance. She just
Maybe not.
killed Fedra because they killed her brother. And then the resistance, like, oh man, look at this leader that like does what she needs. And so they were following her, but every step of the way, she doesn't give a shit about the resistance. If she gave a shit about the resistance, she would have dealt with the, what we find out later is the infected underneath the city. If she cared about the resistance, she would have said, hey, Henry in the large scheme of things doesn't matter. What matters is all these people that are leading me, but she didn't care.
Yeah, because he doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you think about it, which is go back to my thing about, I was pissed off at her stupid decision to ignore that ground rumbling because she's like, Henry's number one. And I'm like, he's a dude. You guys have all of these trucks, all of these firearms, all of these things, and you're just to find one dude and his brother who is deaf. Like, they'll just die to the wilderness. Leave them alone. So like, yeah, it again, that blindness that she's had, and I guess maybe you could extend it to, that's why she took out or had Frederica taken out so brutally, so ruthlessly for the sake of her brother. Again, just goes to that blindedness, which, I mean, yeah, it humanizes her in a way. It makes her broken and very tragic, but at the same time, it also makes her very dumb. And it's really hard to get behind your goal when you are that blind. I mean, yes, it's love that's fueling it, but even at what point, right? It's like you can't even take a second to think. Like, your brain can't just shut off and just think that you're not seeing all of these trucks going out, all of the stuff you have for one person,
And she
when you have all these resources to go get food or supplies and to keep your city safe. that's what you like. It's just so dumb.
Yeah, and she kind of like, and they address it, and when she's giving her backstory in the room, when she's like, my brother said to forgive him, and she's like, what's the point in that? Where's the justice in that? Like she clearly has her own sense of justice, her own sense of priorities. And again, I think that the resistance sees her as a leader for the resistance, and I think she doesn't give a fuck. She just wants to get revenge for who killed her.
Well,
brother.
that's also the same too, because at the beginning of episode 5, where she has like the firing squad to take out those collaborators or whoever they were, and then Tommy was like, I mean, really? Like, I forget what he said, but he was kind of opposing
well,
it.
he said, are we
And
really
then,
going to give them a trial? And she was like, fuck
oh,
no.
that's what it was. But then he's had some kind of opposition to something, and she was like, is this my third, fourth, fifth, or sixth option, or something like that? And he was
yeah,
like,
because
no. He was like, priority.
They were basically they found out that he was still in the city, and she was like, all right, we need to send people out, and he was like, why? Like, he's not gonna do anything. And then she was like,
yeah, like, there's nothing he could possibly do. And she's like, is this my third, fourth, fifth priority or something?
Yeah, this is what we're fucking doing. Like,
and again, like, Tommy trying to be rational and be like, do we really need to, like, he realizes there's no point. She is an idiot and doesn't. And so again, it makes her look so dumb. And unfortunately, I feel like this is probably something I didn't like. I mean, I guess Kathleen's not the best made character because they didn't give it enough time. If we could have seen her brother, seen how good of a leader he was, and then see him get killed, and then see Kathleen's life shatter before her eyes in that way, because maybe she also idolized her brother. It seems to be that she did. And so to lose someone you idolize like that, if we were able to see all of this, even though her decisions are still dumb, at least I could be like, well, okay, okay. After seeing how much you loved your brother and how much you cared for him and loved him, I'm like, okay, it's still dumb, but I get it now.
Yeah.
I can empathize with you.
I think to give the resistance credit on why they're following these seemingly for us irrational decisions, she in episode 4, when they find out that Joel and Ellie are there and that they killed Brian and his crew, she's like, oh man, you see fucking Henry's, getting mercenaries to come after us. So like, she's like manipulating them to see Henry as an actual threat.
It's all just to fuel her own agenda. Exactly. So I guess your hypothesis of her not actually caring about the agenda is starting to hold some water here. And I think that's maybe just something for us to try to interpret and just make for our own decisions. But I like your idea on that, because there are now that we're looking back on it, there are time and time examples again where if you look into it, it's like she's really just she's trying to just do all these things just so that she can kill the person that killed her brother. And so,
and then
it all makes sense.
So unless you have more to say on this, I think we can move on to the big action set piece.
Well, okay, so that's part. Okay, so I like and don't like how they mix things up in this particular episode. It's probably the first time I'm kind of mixed on it. So they got to the things, but in the way they did it was a bit weird. And so they never leave the city in the same way. There's no river or anything they jump down out of or whatever, which that's fine if that's so made it. That's not the big deal. But it's like, it was interesting though that I feel like they could have followed that same thing. Like, they could have had the militia, follow them down a bridge and they jump down the bridge.
Yeah, how they found or how close they were to them was a little bit, all of a sudden they were just there.
But then how they got like to the sewer area, and like it was part of a building, and they found I guess there's a sewer connected to that building, and that's how they got down there. And then that's that. I mean, it was cool that we got to the sewer area. That was cool. I'm happy we got that. with the side story of Ish and that whatever that other guy's Dylan, I think, which only fans who picked up certain pieces of letters would even know
that whole
about.
thing.
So it was dope that they paid homage to that Easter egg, that like side story within a story. So that was really cool. I was really happy to get that, and it was cool to see that nursery area that was in the game, which was great. I love that. Like that was 1-to-1 recreation. Even the little soccer ball thing that they did with Ellie and Sam, it was all great. Some of the stuff was great, but just I was kind of hoping the sequence would have stayed mostly the same, because I felt like it could have worked still. Jumping off the bridge, landing in the little island, which led to the sewers, and then that leads to the neighborhood. Excuse me, which inevitably they get to the sniper area. So, I mean, yes, the sewers does lead to the neighborhood, which is fine, but I don't know. This one was, I was a bit like, huh, okay. I was kind of like on the fence as far as they're how they got from bit to bit, in the areas. Cause I was kind of hard to believe that like this sewage, well, not even a sewage area, just these whatever
underground,
that was connected to this building that anyone could come into. Yeah. It's like, really, they never found this area. Like it just felt like, at least with the one in the game, it's like they would have never found it, never, because it was like part of a little island that they stumbled upon after they jumped off the bridge. So like at least that made more sense. But in the show, it felt like, man, I feel like they could get killed at any moment here. Like anyone would hear them or find them. It just that was a bit weird. But everything else was fine. Like I said, the nursery area was fine. Getting into the neighborhood was great, and then how they kind of redid the sniper area was pretty cool. But I know you wanted to talk about the sniper bit.
Not the sniper bit. After the militia gets there. So if you have anything, basically the sniper bit again was just
okay.
it was again like people are gonna have maybe complaints, that they changed, they took out the gameplay part of that. But again, what are you gonna do? Have Joel
because if you think about
buildings, hopping over, sliding over shelves and shit, like.
Yeah, like, and that was one of the most harrowing fights in the game for me, especially on the hard difficulties. It's one of the toughest areas to get through. So hard. Because no matter what side you go on, it's brutal, right? But it's like, if you think about it, they know that he's not alone, that Henry's probably with him, and they know, right? And so if it was a game adaptation, even if Joel leaves, they would, if people were on the side, like how it was in the game, what's stopping any of them from just coming around where Ellie's at? It makes no sense. It would make no sense. It would be so dumb. So at least if it's just one singular sniper, at least it makes sense for Joel to leave, because it's like no one's going to get them.
So we have the scene where he kills the guy. He kind of like is regretful because it's just an old dude with a sniper rifle.
Which that was interesting. Wasn't expecting it to be an old guy. But yeah.
So what I want to talk about is, so once the militia comes and they're kind of like, Henry, Sam, and Ellie are trapped, and I did actually for the first time feel like before it was just like Kathleen was crazy, but I didn't really feel the craziness of her coming through. This interaction when she's like, look, I get what you did, but I fucking don't give a shit. She was like, I don't, like, you should have just let him die. Like, my brother, like, her, like, she's like, look, like, yeah, your brother, cool, but my brother too. And you should have just let him die. And I really, at that time, I did find her intimidating. I finally found her as like, okay, she seems like a evil person now, and not just like a weird kind of like fish out of water villain, which she kind of, I didn't have any like fear over her before, but now I did. So I thought that interaction was really good. And then we have so we have all that. Do you have anything to say on the interaction there?
No, I'm just going to say, from the moment they get into the neighborhood to the end of the episode was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was literally like just preparing myself for the end.
Well, and
I knew it was happening.
And so like, okay, so like another,
I was nervous the whole time. from that whole like that's like maybe 25, 30 minutes of the episode or whatever. From that
just
to
waiting
the
for
end,
things. Yeah.
I was
So
just like this the whole time.
one of the
I was
main
just,
complaints from people, from game fans who have been too game fanny about the show is like, oh, they're not facing enough infected. Like, where's all the infected? They face there are 3 clickers and that's it. Fucking here you go, guys. Like, you wanted infected. Here you go. We got fucking a horde and the whole sequence. So we watched afterwards, and like all of that, like beyond, like there was some CGI to fill out the like the full makeup on but those are all actors, like real actors, like doing the fucking moving and shit. Like that was fucking great.
The biggest part of CGI that I saw was on the bloater, which you didn't think we would get one.
I didn't.
But we got one.
Yeah, I mean,
we got a bloater.
Oh man! But he was just like, fucking ripped open the second guy's head.
Yeah,
like,
man. No, that was Tommy.
Yeah,
he killed. He just ripped Tommy. I was like,
not Tommy in the show, but Tommy's voice
better.
actor. Yeah.
Tommy deserves better, man. I was like, no.
And just the way he yelled, too. Like, that's the thing. Like, that guy was a badass. He still went out like a bitch. Like, he was like, ah! Like,
can you call it a bitch, though? It's like, it's freaking bloater.
I guess that's true. And but, he screamed like he was in, like, fucking afraid.
He just screamed. He screamed, and he knew it was over.
Yeah.
And what I thought was most shocking with that was 2 things. One, how like it was done faded out, right? It wasn't like an up close shot of it.
Yeah, like
so it kind of faded out. I thought that was actually kind of effective for me. And secondly, how effortlessly that head came off. There was nothing.
Yeah, like
that bloater just legit ripped it off.
Yeah, like I don't know if they're gonna have to face a bloater, like Joel Ellie gonna have to face a bloater, later on in the show. If they do, I don't know. I think another cool thing, an interesting thing. So, obviously, when you have shows like this, you have to compare. Like people are naturally going to compare it to Walking Dead, in my opinion, because it's like post-apocalyptic zombie-ish kind of show.
Okay.
So in Walking Dead, there was one scene, the first episode, that they show a girl, a kid zombie, and nothing happens. Like they don't kill it. They don't, it's just there. And then in the entire series, 11, 13, whatever seasons, you don't see another single kid zombie. Well, we got a kid clicker in this episode, and it was fucking terrifying. Like the way it was just like flipping over the fucking the seat in the car, and she was like, ah! Like I was like, oh shit, they really went for it. Like, okay, like they're like, yeah, kids, they're fucking there was kids, infected too. And that was creepy. And the way that it jumped on Kathleen, it was just like, like pounding at her.
It was funny. Actually, I almost laughed because at first it didn't look like its little like hits
were doing anything. Yeah,
it wasn't until
she
bit.
Yeah, if you think about it, it was like a 5-year-old. Like it was like,
I don't know about 5.
It was a little kid, so like a little kid isn't gonna do anything to an adult, even if it is infected. But then then she was just like ripped at her throat.
Yeah, I mean the bite, that's a done deal. But like it was just crazy to like. It was funny, like like a little spider monkey just like jumped on you, and I'm just like, if it was me, if it didn't bite me, I'm like, I would be, that thing's out of there.
Like, I don't know, like I think Kathleen should have been able to like just grab it and toss it, but whatever.
Honestly, yeah, until she got bit, she was acting like she was getting wailed on by like an adult.
It probably still hurt, but I think you can still
maybe, but I feel like she could have like pushed off that clicker easy. Like it's a little child.
So Are you ready? Are you emotionally prepared?
No, I was not ready. I wasn't ready I wasn't ready when we started this episode.
So let's
and I knew it was coming.
Let's talk about the scene. It was also slightly changed.
A little bit, not too much.
And here's
not too much.
Again, and this is why this is my favorite episode. I think it made it 100 times better. Like the interaction they were having, the back and forth about, they have the line about, why are you never scared, or how are you never scared? They have that same line.
One for one.
One for
Yes,
one.
that was the
Well,
one for
not one
conversation.
for one, because they're having it verbally in the game, and this one they're writing it.
Oh my gosh, it's one for one. Okay.
She even says what are you afraid of? And she writes scorpions.
Yeah.
And he's like,
yes.
and then
Everything was the
she's like,
same.
oh, I'm afraid of ending up alone. And then he's like, I'm afraid, when you
Actually, he didn't say what he was. He didn't say what he was afraid of.
He just asked
that was
when like.
He did up at the monster. Is the monster like still inside of you?
Yeah,
or
like,
something
are you
like
still
that?
inside the monster or something like that? And then
That was from the game.
so
Yes.
then Ellie realizes. So in the game, she like, they go their separate ways, and she doesn't know that he is infected until the next morning. In this one, she knows he's infected, and this is what I love. So in the game, like, you never really get a sense that Ellie thinks that she's special. She knows that she's can't be infected. But other than that, I don't, it never really there's never really a conversation of like the gravitas of like of what she is. And in this, she's like, I am special. I can save, I have the power to save Sam. And she cuts her hand. She's like, my blood is healing. Cause I mean, they don't know why she's can't be infected. So I think it is, reasonable for her to think that it's her blood that is the thing that, stops it. It's just she cuts herself and she puts the blood on the ankle. And I think, one, even for people like us who know what the game did, even I was like, oh man, are they gonna change it to where like maybe
I was legit thinking that. I was like, there's no way.
I don't know how I feel about
it can't
that.
be that
I
easy.
was like, oh man, are they?
It can't be that easy.
Are they not gonna send this? Are they gonna pull this punch? Are they gonna make it so where they survive? And so like,
yeah, I was thinking that too.
As someone who knows what happened in the game, I got like a little bit of hope. So I can only imagine for the people that had no idea what was going to happen, and so they're like, "Oh yeah, this absolutely makes sense. She's going to be able to save Sam." And then again, they wake up. Well, first she makes the promise of staying awake, which she
I knew that
does not do. And then like she wakes up and he's sitting looking out a window. It's like, oh, like okay, like he's good. And then she taps him,
which. That was a bit weird. Well, if you think about it.
It depends. Like I could see like if she was like completely still, like because we see in the games even the.
Oh wait, he's deaf, so maybe he didn't know he was there.
Yeah, I mean that's not going to get fixed. So if he just woke up and we see in the game that is if they don't see you, they're just kind of like, they don't do a lot, and so that. Dude, I didn't even think about it, but you say that, yeah, that's absolutely what happened.
Well, because I was going to say, like, it isn't kind of weird. It's like because in the game, he stays in that room. She leaves the room, and then that's how she finds him, and that's where he attacks her. But in the show, they're both. I was thinking, like, yo, is Ellie just going to die in the night? I'm like, yo, he's going to turn and just kill her in her sleep. Like they're sleeping in the same room.
But
you're just
deaf,
asking for trouble.
He doesn't. As long as he
but
was,
if he's
facing
deaf,
away from her, then he wouldn't have known.
Maybe he wouldn't. And if he's infected, his faculties are probably just long gone. So he probably doesn't
Ellie
remember
taps on him,
about Ellie,
and he turns, and it turns to her, and he's infected. He attacks her.
From there,
it's pretty much one for one. There's a few.
Even the shot on the ground was what like even that. I will say, okay, it was a bit more rushed because after he shoots, so Henry shoots his brother Sam because Sam is trying to kill Ellie and he won't let Joel do it, but then he's freaking out and in the midst of it, he shoots Sam. In the game, he shoots, that all happens, but then it's very, like, at that point, it's like time stands still and it's very, like, quiet. Like, there's no music either. The show had music. The game had no music or very little, right? It was just more like, what, and Henry's really, like, realizing what he's done. And then he points it at Joel. and then he's like talking, but you could tell like he's talking.
Yeah, there
to
was some
himself.
this ambiguity on who, if he was talking to Joel or talking to himself.
Yeah, at first I thought I was talking to Joel, but then if you think about it, it's like, oh, people have like kind of broken this down, and they're like, he's even like pointing out Joel.
Yeah,
he's talking.
He
to
said,
himself,
"What did you
says,
do,
like,
Henry?"
Like, what did you do? Well, first it's Henry, but then later he just keeps saying, when he pointing a gun at Joel, he's like, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. But he's actually talking to himself, and then that's when he pulls the trigger on himself. But in the show, I felt okay. I think in the grand scheme, I think I was more impacted with the game,
which is fair,
just because I felt it was they gave it a tad bit more time to bake. As far as like Joel, I was expecting Henry to talk more to himself about the death and like really start contemplating just a little bit, like maybe just 1 minute more, just 1 minute more of dialogue or monologue, and I think I would have been like, masterpiece. Like masterpiece, the most dramatic scene I've ever seen in my life. But it just, after he shot, it was just a tad bit rushed for me, but I can still tell you I still almost teared up regardless.
Like, I
so
liked it.
It
I
got
liked
me.
it because it was like, this is unlike in the game. This is the first time he's ever been violent. His killing his brother is the first.
It's the first kill he's ever done.
Ever killed. Like that, mixing together.
Yeah.
The way the actor sells what he did, because in the
he does sell it really well. He does.
In the game, absolutely. Ellie is crying out for Joel to help her. In the show, she's crying out for Henry to help her.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
So she's crying out.
Did you read that? Did you read that?
No. I noticed it on the spot. She's crying out for Henry, and I think that's why he reacts. And he turns and he shoots Sam. And then he's like, he turns to Joel for an answer. Like, he's still pointing the gun at Joel, but he's like, what did I just do? Like, he does
say that, which,
like, he wants I think in that moment, he wants an answer. He goes to Joel and he's like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just do? And and then of course, then he turns and shoots himself. And then so in the game, it cuts to black. In the show, it focuses on Ellie's face, and you can see Ellie is just like,
now Ellie's
something
lost.
Breaks
in the show,
in Ellie.
Oh, afterwards, yes, when they're digging the graves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, this
which is interesting.
Fucked.
We will have to see what happens in the next one, how her demeanor is, because it's interesting, because if they go, well, I think they're going to do, then that's much sooner, because she doesn't get cold until after winter.
Yeah.
That's when she gets really cold.
Might be making
but
that
in
move
the show,
first.
So maybe they're doing it sooner.
She leaves
I'm fine with that. Because in the game, it did feel a bit weird. Because Joel in the game, Joel had just saved Ellie from the burning building from
David.
What's the guy's name? The creep David. From David and all. And so I was expecting them to be chummy and this and that, but Ellie's super passive.
Yeah.
For a good part of that first bit, and I'm like, what is up with Ellie?
Yeah.
Your life just got saved, girl. Why are you being moody today or whatever? So if she's moody now, at least there's more context.
Yeah, and I think it's so it continues. It continues the sadness of so she leaves the I'm sorry. I think that's in reference to her not staying up and the blood not working. I
think more of the blood.
She sees herself. She was this savior pretty much, and she wasn't able. The one job she had, the one value.
Well, she thought she could be a savior.
The one value that her life has that Tess has died for. So she finally found that she could make up for that, and then she couldn't. And then also that she leaves that and she's like, hey, we need to go. So she's like, I think we are seeing this transition of, again, you have to move on. And she finally she was able to start being a kid with Sam, and then the world took that away. And I think she sees that as a world saying, hey, you can't be a kid. There's no kids in this world anymore.
Unfortunately, not. I will. Okay, going back to the hotel scene. It was interesting. Like they definitely remixed the lines that he had. I don't think they. I don't think they had to. I think it could have. He could have done the exact
Oh
same
yeah,
thing,
I
and
think
it
they
would
could
have
have.
been just as
Agreed.
impactful. So I was a bit. I was a bit surprised that they gave him all these different lines to say. I'm not upset because it still came off really well, and I did like how he at least acknowledged Joel, pointed the gun at him, kept going kind of back and forth with what he had done and being confused and everything, and like all that. So all that was still portrayed well, and like you said earlier, his delivery was
Yeah.
phenomenal. On that scene, in
Dude,
that
his whole
scene,
facial
and it did.
expressions, I was feeling it for the kid.
Yeah, and it broke me. It got me, which I was like, oh no, I was ready for
Yeah.
this. Like, but nothing could be. I knew nothing was gonna make me ready for it. So I was still happy with that payoff at the end of the episode. That was what I was. That's what I had been waiting for this whole series. It's
Yeah.
been that particular scene. So I still felt, even though some of the lines were changed, some of the actions were the same, like shooting the gun on the floor, shooting Sam, and then pointing the gun at Joel, and all that stuff. So I was so happy with it. But I think in lieu of, in like for the game, how you said to face the black, and then they just move, they move on, they're on their way to Tommy. Well, I think Ellie represents that right instead. So instead of them being able to fade to black and all that, instead we get Ellie, who kind of represents that fade to black and moving
Yeah.
forward. Like no time to mourning,
Well,
no time
and
for anything, just
Joel
moving on.
mourns more than Ellie does.
And then I was gonna say, yeah, you said Ellie breaks. Well, Joel breaks too.
Yeah.
They both break in different ways from these deaths. I will say it was nice that they got burials in the game. I don't think they got proper burials. I know there was like this there's this Easter egg you can find after that bit in the game where you find this little makeshift grave of this little toy, and then if you find it, interact with it, Ellie will want to talk about Sam and all that, and Joel will be like, "No, like we already discussed this," and she's like, "I want to talk about it," and she's like, Joel's like, "People die and you move on," or something along those
Yeah.
lines. But we don't ever see them get buried. We don't know if they got buried, but it's nice to know that they got proper burials in the show,
Yeah.
at least. So I liked that, but it was interesting to see how they both changed. Like, and again, it's just more of this, like, Joel is being humanized and empathetic so much sooner. But I guess, like, I do feel like these are all just these little drops in the bucket that's going to play in what's coming to come up pretty soon with him and Ellie, as far as like trying to pass Ellie on to his brother in Wyoming. So I'm sure it's all going to serve its purpose, but it has been interesting to see how they have been making Joel much more of a nicer guy, slowly but surely, into the show.
Yeah.
Whereas we didn't have any of that up until this point, or even past this point in the game. So that's been
Yep.
interesting. But I think we should do some
Yeah.
ratings.
We have a
David, go
long
ahead.
show. 10 out of 10 for show. Out of Yeah, straight 10 out of 10.
That clicker bit at the end was like, and it was like the comeuppance
Of
of
the
Kathleen's
Kathleen, yeah.
neglect that I
Exactly. Yeah,
talked
yeah.
about.
She's like, she got it.
And I was
She put it off
like,
and put it off.
at first I was like, how does that truck just fall down to the earth? Like, I was so confused about that, but maybe like just the ground just gave way,
It's a
I'd
big ass
imagine, or
truck,
something.
you know.
Yeah, it probably just
Whatever.
gave way. But then, man, when they came
Yeah,
out,
just fucking piling over
oh
each other.
man. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to bring up also. So Joel, they also did the bit with Joel being in the being the
Yeah,
sniper
yeah.
for a
Oh,
while,
yeah, yeah.
which was
That felt
great.
like gameplay
Which I
too.
was
Like, people talking about
the way they were
gameplay.
able to do that. There you
Yeah.
go. Like, that was like, to see how they redid that, because it makes more sense. That was something that made a lot of sense in the show that they redid, because in the game it's like when you get to Joel and you're the sniper, yeah, you got to snipe some people out so that Ellie and Sam and Henry can get to you, which makes sense. But then you have to snipe more people, all these clicks that show up out of nowhere for no reason. Like, it kind of makes no sense. It's more of a game logic thing. But at least here in the show, it's like, well, first he's trying to snipe the people chasing them. It's like, okay, makes sense. And then this freaking clickers come out of the ground. So it's like, okay, like at least that bit made way more sense for why Joel needed to be sniper for a while than he did before. But I will say one little thing I thought was I don't know if it was on purpose, but something that I saw was, especially when Ellie was trying to get into that car and then had to deal with the little kid clicker.
Little girl clicker.
So I think Joel knew the kid clicker was in there or trying to get in there and tried to shoot, but he was missing, I think, or something. But like I was seeing his hands shaking.
Well, I think he was scared for Ellie, I think.
Yeah, I know. That's the point. Like I think he was trying to shoot the kid clicker, but kept missing.
Yeah.
Because he knew Ellie was in that car. And I think like his hands, I was feeling the fear and desperation in Joel, which was the first time I had ever felt that. Not just in the game, well, not just the show, but also from the game. I never felt desperation on Joel's part in the game ever. But so this is the first time I ever saw Joel show a sign of like that fear or like whatever, just vulnerability ever, with his hands visibly shaking, trying to get a good shot on with that rifle. And I was like, and it just added to my suspense, like to my anxiety, because I was like, oh no, please don't miss Joel. No, I felt like that was so well done, but I think it could have been missed if you didn't happen to see, pinpoint your eyes on Joel's shakiness. It just made it so much more real. That's what it was great. But sorry, go ahead. Go with the rating. You said 10 out of 10 on the show.
11 out of 10, whatever. It's my favorite episode so far. Adaptation, I'm gonna give it really hard marks too, because yes, a lot of they changed a lot of little stuff, but again, I feel like they got all the feeling and then some of that sequence. So I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 adaptation, just because it is easy to not make it as hard hitting, in a show format, because you don't know who's watching and stuff like that. And video games tend to be able to be a little bit more brutal with stuff, but they fucking did it. So I'm getting a 10 out of 10. I know I've dinged them for adaptation when it does stray, because I've tried to be more exact adaptation, but I don't care. It got me feeling all the same feelings that I had in the game. So 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Best episode so far.
For a regular show, I feel like also, again, this is what people have been also waiting for.
Yeah, lots of action.
To see. Good action for sure. Good storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Good world building. Good character building. They finally gave Kathleen a little bit backstory.
Yep.
I'm not saying it was great, but there was something now. Tommy's still cool as hell as always. By Tommy, I mean his voice actor. He doesn't even need a backstory. He's just Tommy's voice actor. He's just a cool guy. I'm gonna give it a 9 as a regular show. Just as a regular show. Even if you didn't care about Last of Us, I'm going to give it a 9. I think it was a fantastic episode, just as a good show. I don't know if they'll be able to top this. Maybe if they do the David bit, maybe we'll get some. Maybe it'll top in that.
Yeah, I hope David is menacing as fuck.
This, I hope I hope not menacing. Well, maybe menacing, but I hope he's creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
I want him to be unsettling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not physically imposing, but just you know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping for. Anyways, adaptation wise, I feel like I have to judge it in two halves, because the first half, I mean, yes, there's a little bits of the nursery, I think, and some little bits here and there, but a lot of it is either there's really nothing to adapt, or it's kind of loosely adapted. I will give high marks to the Ish and Dylan bit, or I think Dylan, whoever the other guy was. I will give high marks to that.
Is seen. You can tell Neil is in every episode.
Yes, I will say that. I mean, he's always there. He's always there's always something around, right? Even if it's something out of place, it's not stupid per se. You can tell Neil wasn't heavily involved from start to finish. I will say that. Yeah. And like I said, high marks to having the Ish little thing, to know. It's great that Neil knows that we as fans know about that thing they put into the game, right? So we cared enough to know about it and talk about it enough to where they know we do. And so they put it in for us. So high marks to that. But the first half again, I feel is just not really. I don't really know if I would even want to grade it, and if I do, maybe 6 at the highest. But everything after the sewers onwards, 9, maybe 10, minimum 9. It was they did it how they could have done it with a show, because yes, I know there was no other enemies in the sniper bit and all that. It was very fast and quick. I get it. I understand. But again, remember, this is not a game. You cannot just arbitrarily have all these goons around, because then you open yourself up to having all this logic that gets thrown out the window. Like we said before, of like, well, there's goons on the right and Joel goes to the left. There was nothing stopping them from getting Henry and Ellie and Sam. There'd be nothing stopping them from killing them.
Yeah.
So you can't have it be, you can't just have all these, clear out area to area to area gameplay. That you can't have that in the show. I'm sorry, guys, you just can't have it. But yeah, they did it as perfectly as they could. So from Joel getting to the sniper, having even that little interaction with the old guy was impactful. They even made that like even Joel like said like, please don't do this.
Please don't.
Please, like, which is weird because like again I was like, damn, Joel again being empathetic, which he never was in the game. He would have just killed that guy. No second thought.
He just walked into the room and just been like, pop.
Yeah, he done. Doesn't move him to the side. Guess it. And so it was. And so even that had his like tiny little. It was like 5 seconds, and it touched me so much. So like that was fantastic. And then and then Joel realizing like, oh, they're coming and they need to do that. So that was cool to see that played out. So instead of a tank they had to escape from in the game, is he's like this freaking militia group coming for them, running at them. Just rolls up. So they remixed that, but it still makes sense and works with the narrative they made in the show. And then Kathleen's neglect is what brings out the clickers, gives the clickers an excuse to be here again because they were in the game. So it gives them another excuse to, and regardless of Kathleen being not the best leader, at least for the narrative they've made, at least it makes sense. So that was great. Seeing the bloater was crazy. Yes, that wasn't in the game, but it was crazy.
It was great.
To see the bloater. Times. That was not good times. That was bad times for everybody. I don't think anyone's going to be upset having the child clicker around, even though that was brand new. I don't think anyone's really going to be mad about that. That's very interesting. And I wonder if that's going to play later at all. And so
I think totally one time's impactful. The rest of it, like I don't know.
Well, it depends on how it was played out, right? Maybe like Ellie runs into a child clicker, but the clicker or child infected, but the infected doesn't like freak out on her immediately or something. So like if they play it differently, right? Not just like, oh, we're just running away from child clickers. It's like, oh, now I'm around one and like, I don't know, they like kind of just stare at each other for a while or something, something like if they play it something like that, because it's still a child. So maybe they can play on that a bit. Yeah. Anyways, and then of course the final scene with Henry and Sam, and even though it was a bit different with Henry's lines, everything else was pretty much spot on. And yeah, it got me. Yeah. And then the way they redid the final scene, the aftermath scene was that was brand new, but it fit really, really well.
Yep.
And it's going to show us a different side of Ellie, which we did not get at this point, but it makes total sense to do it because I mean I was surprised Ellie was still in her good emotions in the game. I was very surprised. I would have been effed up. So
for sure.
Yeah. So I mean the latter half more than makes up for any adaptation wise, that is more than makes up for anything before that. And so, but then you throw in the little ish thing on top of that, little cherry on top. And you guys have at least a minimum 9 out of 10 adaptation wise from me.
Yeah.
So great episode.
Next week we get Tommy in Montana.
Tommy is back, and we're gonna see how that plays out. And maybe we might get the episode where Ellie and Joel have their big old emotional talk, which still makes me still sheds a tear to my eye when I rewatch the cinematic to this day. So
let's go.
We'll see how this may be where I can finally side with Ellie. This may be the moment where I'm like,
to do it.
I am Team Ellie. Well, Team Bella Ramsey as Ellie.
Yeah.
So sorry this is a long one. We had a lot to go over. Next time won't be as long. Hopefully we won't miss the next one. So thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening. Tell us what you thought about episode 4 and 5. Even though 4 is about a week old now. Tell us what you thought. Give us your thoughts. If you like this, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on what your thoughts on the show as a whole, the episodes, and everything else in between.
See you next week, guys.
That, I'm RJ. That's David, CHG. See you next time. Bye.